I love to talk. I love to have conversations with my students. I want to know what's on their minds. And I think we all experience a situation where there's always going to be a couple students who are always willing to participate, and if you rely on them constantly, then the conversation is always about their points of view, and the classroom dynamic gets skewed to them. What about the person who's in the back of the classroom, who has something to say, but they're just too scared or nervous or whatever the case is? And then I think there are some students who want to participate, but they just generally just don't feel comfortable, you know? And Poll Everywhere is kind of a solution to my particular conundrum. And I can't tell you how quickly there was a change in my classroom. Poll Everywhere is a web and app-based interface that allows for instant audience response and puts the ability to interact and generate discussion into the palms of your students' hands. I pulled that directly from their website because I didn't know how else to say it, because that's what it does. It's live audience participation. How does it do this? Well, essentially, it asks your audience questions with the Poll Everywhere app. Audience answers in real time using mobile phones, Twitter, or web browsers. And you see your response live on the web or in a PowerPoint presentation. The first thing is it's free. There are levels at which you're going to have to pay, and you get a lot of bells and whistles, but you don't have to. It's free, and for my purposes and the amount of students that I have in my classroom, it's right where I need to be. It relies on your student's smartphone. But then I started realizing that, you know, I was asking questions, and they have this device that has access to all of this information. Why am I depriving them of this, you know? Are the students going to sometimes get on Facebook and Twitter? Sure, but you know, it's no different than passing notes in class. So I was starting to embrace the idea that, you know, if they have these tools with them, and this particular app allows them to interface with me, then pull out your phones and let them use it. So, is it a technology for your teacher? I think it can be a teacher. I think it can. And it allows for anonymous participation. And this was one of the immediate results that I saw, was that where prior to doing the demonstration and the experimentation of Poll Everywhere in my classroom, there were some students who just said nothing all semester long. Yet they're turning in all of this A-level work. You can see that the gears are working. But why are they just sitting there? You know, I'm practically begging them to participate. Everything you have to say is important. And it allows students to apply their knowledge in an interactive and instantaneous way. And it's both web and app friendly, which is great because the students can interface with it on their smartphones, and I can interface it with both on my iPad or my desktop computer. Question creation is easy and straightforward, and there are multiple formats. So essentially what you're doing is you're creating a poll, and you can basically ask anything that you want. It takes you step by step. It allows you to do all sorts of different ways of the poll responses being displayed, text wall, word cloud, cluster, ticker. Those are open-ended questions. You can create multiple choice questions. They can start out in the form of true or false questions, but you can actually add answers and customize this to your desires. The one thing I did notice is that the free version limits your multiple questions to 5. You can't have more than 5, because I was trying to load about 6 or 7 or 8 at one point in time, and I was like, okay, it doesn't like that. And then another one that I've just begun playing with is a clickable image, where you can actually upload an image and graph specific areas on the image, and students will actually be able to see that image and point and click on it. I don't teach geography, but I was like, you know, if I had a map of the Middle East and I asked someone where the capital of Oman was, you know, this would be a great kind of thing. I could have a picture of the Persian Gulf up there, and they could click and point and stuff. So that one I'm still playing with. It was a little fussy on my smartphone yesterday. Anyway. All the questions that you create are then put into a list for you to pull from. They're there forever until you decide to get rid of them. There are also public polls, so there's things that people have created out there already which you can use. there's a bunch of different ways to respond. So what I asked my students to do was download the Poll Everywhere app from their app store, whether it's the Google Store, or I believe you can get it through I think it's even on Microsoft's platform, and of course the iPhone as well. But then I had some students who had older phones, and I said, well, you're not excluded because you can text your answers. We have that as well. And then you can also, if you have an access to a web browser, or a student has a laptop, they can actually go to the poll through your own personalized web link. So what happens is when you register to use Poll Everywhere, you're going to be given an address, a web address. And for mine, it's poll.ev.com/GaryFry921. And once that's established, that's going to be very important, and that's where you're going to always send your students to. As you set up your questions, you can actually do things like set a timer so that your students have a certain amount of time that they have to respond to the question that you have. You can do some customization in the free version. So if you don't like this background here, you can go in and make adjustments, change some of the settings and appearances. I think you get more fun stuff if you pay. I just stuck with the basics. And the interesting thing about this is it can actually be integrated into PowerPoint. So like I said, Prezi and I still aren't getting along real well, so I'm still relying on PowerPoint. And you can actually develop a PowerPoint and actually download these slides directly into a PowerPoint presentation. I kind of stayed away from that because you have to load an executable file onto every computer you're using. And I'm the kind of person, getting back to the whole idea of getting back from around this, that I really want to have my presentation on my iPad, bring it up on SlideShark, walk around the classroom. So what I learned was that you can just very easily, as you create an individual question and it appears in your interface here, you can actually just copy and paste this link and put it into PowerPoint, and as long as you've got an internet connection, it'll take you right to that poll every single time. When the students download the app from what our app store they're going to go into, I'm going to start Poll Everywhere. This is what they're going to see. So right away, it's very simple. Either you're participating or you're presenting. In this case, my iPad's going to play the role of the student, and they're participating. All they have to do is, in this box where it says join a presentation, is put in my identifier. And trying to get the students to apply what they've been reading and apply what I've been talking about in class, I really wanted to start to have brainstorming sessions and see what they're able to come up with. And so we did a lecture activity based on the idea that they were going to create a theater presentation. And this was in the chapter on design. And so we were talking a lot about the styles of theater and the different kinds of roles, lighting designers, costume designers, all those kinds of things that go on behind the scenes in order to get a show up and running. So basically I allowed them to create a story. They were very dramatic. And then from that story we started to build a theatrical presentation. And so what I did is I said, well, okay, before we even start, we've got to talk about what kind of show we want to do. And so I put this hyperlink into my PowerPoint, and it brought me right to where I had set up the question. Now up here you can see participants because my iPad is set up as one of my students. So I can keep an eye on how many people are actually participating in the poll. And then what I can do is increase to full size and then actually start the poll by using this button down here, which I'll talk about in just a little bit of a second. There we go. And then so what the students are seeing on their smart devices is this. And all they have to do is type in whatever they want to type in. And then on this classroom computer, I see what they've added. We have large, very big, intimate, a large-scale Broadway type play, large. These are actual all real student responses. Once this was done, we really then went through and talked about their choices, why they chose what they did. And so I returned to the PowerPoint slideshow, and we talked about all the different kinds of theater spaces that are out there. Some of the things that I found with Poll Everywhere is, once again, the integration with PowerPoint was a little challenging at first, learning that you had to download an executable file. The push feature and poll question management. This was kind of a tricky thing to kind of dial in. Once you actually go into starting to develop questions banks that you want to have in your repertoire in Poll Everywhere, you have to kind of get into the mindset that it's all going to one location. And it's whatever you have active is going to be in this location at any one point in time. So you have to kind of learn that there's a difference between pushing a poll to that location so it's live for students to actually interact with, and starting and stopping a poll. Starting a poll basically just means that it's ready to go. Pushing it means that it actually appears on the device, and then stopping it means that there's no more responses can be given. Once I kind of dialed into this and kind of understood how to manage this, this became really, really easy. It was just a matter of getting to class a few minutes early, setting it all up, making sure that I had everything where it needed to be, and everything was set in the right place, and it was a very smooth ride through the rest of the presentation. Browser compatibility was a little bit of an issue initially, understanding that it is a web-based application, and that it can have, depending on which version of browser you're using, can kind of make it operate a little funky, but it's all the information's there. It's just getting kind of, you may have to switch from Internet Explorer to Firefox, or Firefox to Internet Explorer, or sometimes the Google Chrome. The app version on the presenter's end is a bit limited. So one of the last things I just wanted to show you is that if you chose to run this from the iPad as the presenter, I would choose on presenting. This would just basically log in my information, and then just basically all you're able to do is type a question in. And it becomes very kind of limited on how that information is displayed. It's just pretty much a numerical count of who selected what. And I just found that being able to go to the web-based version, I can get the word cloud functions, I can get the different kinds of scales and demonstrations of responses. Here's what I learned. It absolutely changed the vibe of the classroom. It wasn't hard to earn buy-in from the students. Once they realized that they could download something on their smartphone and have their smartphone out and be able to interact from that, everyone was there. I think I only had one student who was a little hesitant about using the technology, but by the end of the semester, he was starting to text his answers in. And they're upgrading it. There's a new beta version coming out. They're going to, some of the difficulties that I mentioned here, it's kind of convenient, I guess, for me, because some of the complaints that I had about using it, they seem to be addressing and fixing the beta version of the later version they're going to release later. So they're making efforts to really smooth it out, and I'm looking forward to using it